I talk a lot about metabolic health on this show, but how do you know if your metabolism, I don't really like to use the word broken or damaged, but how do you know if your metabolism has taken a hit? And maybe that's the reason that you can't reach your body composition goals or you can't lose weight. We're going to dive into all things metabolism with my guest today. Very excited about this conversation. Today I have with me Ashley Filmore. She is the founder of Metabolic Fix, a premium online coaching company that has helped thousands of women to break free from chronic dieting and to achieve sustainable results. Very important. Her goal is to empower women to break free of these barriers that hold them back, help them create a blueprint to build the life of their dreams, and inspire them to embrace the life of health, happiness, and self-love. Why the decisions we make today can impact our goals, such as weight loss, and why envisioning your future self in 6 to 12 months are things that we're going to dive into today, as well as her metabolic fix and what it means to restore your metabolism to a healthy point. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol. I'm so excited to be here today and speak with your audience.
Before we dive into your metabolic fix and the stages of this, the transformation, we talk about hormones and all of the things. What brought you to this point of helping women?
Yeah, so my journey really started about 20 years ago. I was graduating college, and my internship was my first real job, I would say, in my field. And I was so determined and motivated to be the best personal trainer and nutrition coach possible. So I was working literally full time right out of the gate, 40 plus hours a week, hands on in person with clients. And I started to put to work everything that I learned through my college degree and my personal training certification. But early on, I really did start to see that all of the women I was working with were really falling in their late 30s and these, some even in their 50s. They just simply weren't all responding to the eat less, move more approach. And so they were doing cardio, they were eating in deficits. And sure, when they came into the company I was working for, we had a definitely a more sustainable approach, but it was still just a similar formula in the sense of, okay, we're going to add in the strength training, we're going to tell you to eat some healthy foods, hoping for a really great outcome. And it just wasn't always happening. And through my own journey as well, behind the scenes, simultaneously, I was very much so thinking, if I am going to do this job well, I need to look the part. And so at that time, we didn't have Instagram and TikTok to turn to. I had Oxygen Magazine and some other fitness magazines that were my favorite. And I really didn't feel like I looked like a personal trainer should. And so at that point in my journey, I was not only exercising and, trying to live a healthy lifestyle, or what I thought was a healthy lifestyle. I was willing and then started to kick it up to a very unhealthy form of exercise, way of exercising, way of eating, because I didn't feel like I looked like that trainer. I've always been on the thinner side. I would say definitely really hard to build muscle mass, really hard to see that I didn't ever feel like I really worked. I didn't feel like I looked like I worked out. I worked out all the time, but I don't really feel like it showed. I mean, sure, I was skinny, but I didn't have any muscle definition. I just thought if I want to look like the lady on that cover, I really need to kick it up. And so instead of training smarter, I did not. I ended up just training harder, and I ended up exercising more and more. And I ended up getting my body to a point to where I was, fluctuating and binge eating and emotional eating. And then, I would diet really hard. I did keto, I did low carb. I was literally eating. I can still scroll back to the data in my Fitness Pal, which is very disturbing to see at times. I was eating, 1,200 calories, working out multiple times a day, 6, 7 days a week as a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old. And so as I was front facing, working with clients and seeing them struggle, behind the scenes, I was struggling. And let's just say that approach that I still see many women accidentally falling into, it really started to burn me out. My hormones started to take a toll. My mental health started to take a toll. My relationship with food and my body really started to push back. And I ended up being in a situation as a young 20-year-old young woman wanting to start thinking about a family, having a hormone profile of a 45-year-old woman going through perimenopause. So I had no hormones. I mean, it looked like full on perimenopause at that age. And my clients weren't doing as great. So professionally, I started to see some things shifting. And then I started to say, hey, I think we need to look outside of this just normal one size fits all, lift weights, do some cardio, eat a healthy diet approach. And that's when I went on to get advanced certifications in hormonal and metabolic health and specializing in women's health. And when I did that, it opened my eyes. I started to be able to connect the dots and say, okay, no wonder she's not responding well. No wonder her body composition is shifting and she's now gaining weight and her lower stomach and her hips and her thighs. No wonder she's having all these symptoms that really weren't making sense to me. And then I was able to really see the depth of my own hormonal imbalances and disordered eating and metabolic damage and say, okay, we need to do things differently. And so very slowly I started healing myself. I did get some professional help throughout my own journey as well. And then I started to implement strategies very differently with my clients. And after about a decade of working for a great company, we ended up parting ways. I started my own business and I moved my company online 6 years ago and now virtually help women all around the world with the metabolic fix principles and just the method that I've used now for almost 20 years.
I love this. I especially really appreciate that you touched on the fact that women can have these hormonal issues younger because we're really focused right now on perimenopause, menopause, as we should. There hasn't been enough light shown on that area. But women in their 20s, because I do occasionally have younger clients, they can be experiencing problems with cortisol, problems with body composition, the body fat settling in around the midsection. They could have the profile, as you said, of a perimenopausal woman. And we're seeing this even in men that the testosterone levels are dropping by the decade in men, where you've got young men having the testosterone profile of a 60-year-old man and they're 25. And so I really appreciate that you brought light on that, because I think, yeah, we can be experiencing these problems even younger. I know, looking back on myself, I realized it was brewing in my teeth already. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. Now, we mentioned the Metabolic Fix program. How did you come to develop that program? What was your incentive behind that?
Yeah, so a lot of it was honestly trial and error. So again, the company I worked for was an amazing opportunity for me. I wouldn't be here today without that experience, and it really kind of put me on the right trajectory to get to where I am today. But as I was working for someone else, I also did start to see that some of the things that we were doing just really wasn't the best way to treat an individual client. And every single client was different and everybody would respond differently. And so throughout that process, and even through my own journey, it was years of just going through what was really working well with clients. How much support did they need? What wasn't necessary? I mean, sometimes you think you need to give a laundry list of to-dos to clients. And oftentimes I find that overwhelms them more and they shut down, even though in that moment they're looking at you and they're very much so enthusiastic and wanting to do all the things, that when they actually walk out the door or close down the Zoom and go into their real life, it's like, whoa, I can't get this many steps in. I can't eat this way. I can't do these workouts. This is all too much. And so it was really a lot of trial and error. And to be honest, in my beginning years as a trainer and a nutrition coach, there were mistakes. And I still am learning as I'm, now into my career, many years at this point. But I will say at first there were a lot more trial and error and really being able to see what worked and what was needed. And when I started to see that women would go into three categories, and this is really how the fundamentals and the foundation of my company is built, it was really then at that moment I was able to offer a level of customization and support to every single client. And that truly made or would break the possibility of them reaching their goal. So it was critical to start them off with where they needed to be started. And so through my journey, I realized that there's really three different categories for a lot of us women. And again, this is going to apply to that woman that has a dieting history, that maybe is 35 plus, going through perimenopause, not seeing results, maybe have tried other programs or doing things that they used to do and the results aren't the same. There's three primary phases. There's the repair phase, there's the rebuild phase, and there's the results phase. And so in my career, even in person, I was able to determine based off of assessments and evaluations where each client needed to start. And then when I did that, I was then able to follow certain protocols on a customized level, very individualized to that individual, to help them work through the phase and progress to the next phase. Because really, the end goal is to not only reach your desired body composition or desired weight, it's to maintain it. And I think something that switches with us as women, and this is an assumption here, but just based off of my experience, is maybe in your 20s, the primary goal is I just don't really care how I lose the weight. I just want to lose it. So give me the diet,
Yeah,
tell me what to
same.
do. Yeah, I mean, I was that way too. But I'll speak for myself even. Now in my late 30s, I'm a mom of two. I run my company. I have a 6 and 9-year-old daughter. I have my marriage. I have a house to manage. I'm wearing a million hats day to day. I'm very aware of my hormonal state and my health. I don't have energy and time to waste. And so wherever I spend my energy, and same for the listeners listening in, it matters so much. And I need to make sure that I'm doing things the right way because I don't have time to waste and do it over a million times anymore. And so being able to start off in the right phase allows you to progress in a way where you're not spinning your wheels and you're progressing through each phase in a customized way. And you're starting off where you really need to be starting off versus just popping into a program, assuming you're like every other individual and then not getting the same outcome that they're getting.
I love how you describe, taking them through these stages and then not just taking them through the stages, but really getting them in the right stage, starting where they're at, because maybe not everybody needs the first stage of this. Maybe they're ready for the second stage or the second transformation here. I want to talk a little bit about that first phase, that repair phase, because I find this as a coach to be challenging. So really what we're talking about here is building the foundation of a healthy metabolism. So if somebody comes to you and they've been eating, I don't know, because I've seen this, 1,000 calories, and they're exercising like crazy, maybe not strength training, but tons of cardio, going to classes, all of the things, and there's nowhere to go. And they're not losing weight, they're stuck, and they come to you to lose weight, and you have to tell them, well, you've got to eat more. That's not, we were talking off camera about this. It's not very sexy. It's not very exciting. We want to jump into that third stage right away. Like, give me the results. That's what I came here for. I didn't come here to have a coach tell me I need to eat more, or what we call a reverse diet out. And, having been in the bodybuilding world for a long time, each time I did a show, we always had to reverse diet out. The most challenging thing I had to do, harder than doing the show, harder than the fat loss stage, was stopping and reverse dieting out with intention, with control, not a free for all, like suddenly flood my body with calories. How do you keep women on track? Because you must get pushback. You must get a
Yeah.
little bit of pushback there.
I get a lot of pushback actually, but I think as coaches, I feel very compelled and passionate about having my clients believe and have the confidence in my ability to help them get to where they need to be. So, with that being said, there are lots of doubts because a lot of the women I work with, and you probably see this too, Carol, nothing has really worked well for them, or they're relying on things that they used to do in their 20s and their bodies just aren't responding. When you're stuck and you're spinning your wheels, you get into your own head, you can start feeling really defeated. And I'm so grateful I didn't have Instagram and TikTok to compare my body to, because I truly think my journey would have been even worse, if that's possible, than what it was already. I mean, I just had magazine subscriptions I could cancel, but it's a lot harder to cancel Instagram or cancel TikTok nowadays, where you're just being flooded with beautiful bodies and you don't know the backstory and you're constantly comparing yourself. And so the repair phase is such an essential phase if you need to start there. And if you skip this phase and you need to start there, you're not going to get the results that you want. And so that is really the message that I will ensure that I make very crystal clear from a very loving and caring place as a coach to my client. So if you have underlying metabolic damage or adaptation, your metabolism really isn't broken or damaged. It's just downregulated. If you have metabolic adaptation, you can't diet harder to overcome that. You can't train harder to overcome that. And at the same time, if you have pretty severe metabolic adaptation, especially if you're already in the perimenopause age, your hormones are shifting. So much of your metabolic health is tied to your hormonal health, and your hormonal health tied to your metabolic health. So you have to approach this more from more of a functional, holistic, foundational way to ensure that you get your metabolism healthy if you have metabolic adaptation or underlying hormonal issues. So in this phase, number one is we have to do an assessment. We need to see where you are. Do you actually have metabolic adaptation? Are you really under eating? A lot of times, maybe you're not tracking the butter or the coffee creamer or the little spoon of peanut butter. Or I know as a mom, you don't want to throw away your kids' leftovers because it's expensive or organic or whatever. And so you're eating them. Those calories count too. So step one is we need to determine, are you actually under eating? And so if you are under eating, we have to then immediately do a reverse diet, which is what we start exclusively in the repair phase. If there are underlying hormonal issues, we're also going to address those. And the beautiful thing with all of this is, let's just say you have hormonal concerns and metabolic adaptation, which can sound really scary right now, but it's not as bad as it sounds. You're not doomed for life. You're not going to be stuck here forever. You can address this simultaneously by improving your food quality, by building that great foundation, by learning what real nutrition, healthy, whole food eating looks like. And you can start a reverse diet, which is just simply put, strategically increasing your calories incrementally, broken down to protein, fats, and carbs over a period of time. But I advise everyone listening in, if you think that you're eating under your BMR, if you think, which is your basal metabolic rate, if you know that you've been in a deficit for a long time and your body's not responding, take a look at your metabolic health. Let's see where that is, because you don't want to just add in a bunch of extra calories and say, oh, I'm just going to go get some pizza, or I'm going to have an extra glass of wine, or I'm going to, eat some extra chocolate. You want to make sure you are working with someone that can really help build your nutrition profile and your macronutrient needs based off of your overall goals, your overall lifestyle, exercise, health history. There's several things that go into that, but this is a critical phase. The last comment, because I know this is such a very long-winded response, is a lot of women have spent their life dieting and still don't know what to eat. A lot of women have done more than 5 diets in their lifetime when we hit the age of 40. Very few women know what to actually eat. That is something I change. In the repair phase, you learn how to eat correctly. You learn how to build your plate. You learn what protein, fats, and carbs are, and how to ensure that you're building your meals and snacks in a fashion that supports your lifestyle and your goals. All of these diet programs are teaching us how to diet harder. They're not teaching us how to eat for our body and our hormones. And it's shocking to me how many women come into my programs having dieted 10 years or longer, and they don't know what a protein is. They don't know what a healthy whole food carb is. They feel like they are eating healthy, but in reality, they're eating foods that's negatively impacting their hormones, negatively impacting their overall health and longevity. their ability to build muscle mass, and they're not even aware of it. And that is the diet culture's fault, not the individual. And so I try to get in there and my team and break that up so there's awareness. So if they were to speak to you and you were to say, hey, metabolic fix client, do you know what you need to be eating for your goals? The answer immediately is yes, I do. I can tell you, here's what I should be eating. Here's the way my meals need to be looking, regardless of if I'm tracking or not. So that's what we do in the repair phase.
Yeah, so many women do make dieting a lifelong hobby, as I refer to it. And I grew up in a time where, being 63, the time that I grew up, and I think specifically of the 70s, there was a big emphasis on skinny. And my mom had that perception too. Aunts had that perception. So we kind of learn it really young. I remember going on my first diet at something like 12 years old, and the diet was, I think, fresca and, salads, because I didn't know anything. And then when I really started digging into nutrition, just like you described, not knowing really what protein sources are, adequate protein sources that have the amino acid profile. So you're getting a complete protein. Because I would think, oh, I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or I ate a grilled cheese, and I thought I was having, and yeah, there's some protein in there, but it wasn't, it was more fat than it was protein. So really teaching women, okay, this is how we need to be eating, so important. I think too there is discipline that has to occur with the reverse diet, as you talked about, because it is not a free for all. And I believe, tracking and actually knowing can really help. It's information. Now, tracking gets a bad reputation sometimes because people think, oh, you're obsessing over food, or I'm so tired of tracking. I just look at it like a tool. Like, how can you change something when you don't know? Like, you have to know. What are your thoughts on that, on tracking?
Yeah, I agree with you. Tracking is a tool. It's not a lifelong solution. But quite honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today without tracking when I initially was breaking free from chronically dieting. Because the truth is when you are dieting and you have acclimated to constantly dieting, meaning you are just on autopilot and pretty much are always on a diet, it's easy to feel like you're eating enough, but you're not. And see, that was my problem. I remember looking at 1,500 calories. And if you were to ask me, how much do you think you ate today? I would have said 2,500 calories because I'm stuffed. And I was so used to chronically under eating. I did not know what eating enough looked like. I could not trust my own instincts because I ignored them for years. When you're a chronic dieter and you truly have a dieting history, you learn how to turn off some of those signals and you just keep your head down, you do the work necessary, and maybe you are a little hungry still, but you don't eat because that you're on the diet. You only get X amount of calories. You chew gum, you drink coffee, you have diet soda. I mean, those are some very common traits that we see when you're dieting and things I did. I mean, I would have 2 or 3 packs of sugar-free gum a day. And so when you tell me to eat more, okay, I added in a potato. Okay, I a little bit of extra peanut butter. And so for me to efficiently and effectively reverse diet and ensure that I was balancing my diet the way that it needed to be, I had to track. It was such a beautiful experience though, because I finally started to see for myself visually as well what it looked like and how much I needed to consume every day. And it was shocking because it was a lot more than I thought. And there was a little discomfort even eating 1,500 calories. I have women that are eating 1,000 to 1,200 calories a day. I will set them initially, kind of do my full evaluation. Let's just use this as a good example, maybe 1,500 calories. And they feel like they've literally ate a whole house. And their stomachs, their bodies, mentally, it's just so many hurdles for them to overcome. So I believe that tracking has a purpose. I think it is the most effective tool to use when it comes to changing your body composition and monitoring the foods that you consume. But here's what I do believe. We can't stay in a deficit and be in fat loss phase all year round. We should be living a good portion of our life and year in maintenance. And I do believe that you should be competent and have confidence and knowing that you can eat in a way to support your goal without feeling like you have to be a prisoner to tracking. So, a part of my process in the results phase is we actually spend time in that final phase really ensuring and teaching the client how to graduate from tracking if they still are, and how to intuitively eat, and then how do they approach tracking for the rest of their journey in the future. Let's just say if they want to pull that tool back out. So I think I always tell clients it is not the end destination, it's just a tool that we're going to use to help you get to where you want to be. But the end goal is to have you where you want to be, eating intuitively, having been able to understand and know what you need to eat from the time you spent tracking.
You described that beautifully because we do hear a lot about intuitive eating, and it sounds great. But what I find is it's not very realistic unless somebody has gone through this journey. They've learned to track, they've learned food. Like I can look at a plate of food and I know the macros in my head now. I have weighed, I have measured, I have tracked, I've done the things over the years. So I can just look and go, okay, 30 grams of protein, 20 grams of carb. I mean, it's there in my head and know. But it would be like, intuitively flying an airplane, it's just not going to work. You got to understand the ins and outs. How does your body work? And, what are you actually taking in and how much protein? Then intuition can come in later. And then I think too, and we're talking more about the woman that undereats, but sometimes I get a lot of women that they've been eating really ultra processed food. Not all processed food is bad, as we know. Pretty much, I mean, if you're buying ground meat, that's been processed, but that ultra kind of Frankenstein food, and the signals in their brain it's like it's a noisy system because they're getting these cravings that this food is designed to be addictive, just by nature. And so it's impossible to be intuitive until those signals have been cleared, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I could say right now, back in my dieting days, intuitive eating for me was eating 1,000 calories sometimes. And so also, you can intuitively undereat, just like you can think you're intuitive
Hmm.
eating and balancing things out well, but you're overeating. That's not something that you can just step into. Like you said, you can't just hop in an airplane and drive it around. Like you have to learn. There's a process. You have to go through steps if the end goal is sustainability, if the end goal is for you to not waste your time. And here's what I always tell my clients, this is it for you. Let's use this as the last investment you make. So, if that is the fact, how are we going to set you up for long term success? Because we have to break this desire to start over every January, to start over every Monday, to go to another diet if things aren't working within a week or two. And so, if that really is the goal, sustainable results, weight loss, fat loss, or body recomp, where you're maybe staying the same weight, building more muscle, losing fat, that is just one piece of the puzzle. The most important piece, in my opinion, is teaching you how to maintain it. And intuitive eating can be a part of that because no one's going to log every single day of their life forever. But you have to get yourself to that spot. You can't skip to, let's say, the last mile of the marathon. You have to go through all of the miles to get there. And I do feel like just look at tracking as a tool that you're going to use to get from A to B, because there really is no other way for you to know exactly how much you're eating and where your calories are coming from unless you are tracking.
Agreed. So just shifting gears here just a little bit. So you have your repair phase and then you move to the rebuild. What is that phase?
So the rebuild phase is for that woman that's actually eating enough. So maybe someone like yourself, Carol, where you're competent in nutrition, meaning you have already broken free from the dieting BS, you know how to build a healthy plate, you're eating plenty of protein, you're already strength training, you just have that foundation built. We skip that because my goal is to efficiently get my clients to their goal sustainably and help them in a way that's going to last. I don't want to put you through the repair phase if you don't need that. So it would be a waste of your time. So for example, the rebuild phase is for that individual that's more of an intermediate trainee in the gym. They have a foundation with strength training already. They already know how to eat. They're eating at maintenance. They're, really in a great spot, but they're still not where they want to be, or they feel like they need professional intervention to help map out how to get them to where they want to be to ensure that they do it. So that is when we tweak the strength training. Not only do we still do the full metabolic evaluation and assessment there, but instead of putting you through a reverse diet, we'll just really assess where you are, where are the issues. We'll base your overall macronutrient profile off of really your top concerns and what we see that we need to address through all of your assessment intake work. And we still work on that foundation, but it's expedited. It's a lot faster. And so we typically will keep you in that phase for at least a month and a half to just get everything cleaned up, ensure that everything's really dialed in. And, the phase can last longer for those that want it to and need it to, but it can also be a month and a half before we then take you on to the final phase, which is the results phase.
And the results phase, are you moving into, okay, so you're achieving your results, and then are you moving them toward like maintenance, maintaining those results?
Right. And one thing I forgot to mention is in the rebuild phase, we're also priming and prepping your mindset for that transformation. With the dieting culture, there's also a big misconception on how long it takes to reach your goal, what sustainable weight loss looks like, mental hurdles that may arise, unexpected, unforeseen life circumstances, all or nothing thinking, catastrophizing. We go through all of it because I see it all. I just started the results phase and I didn't lose 2 pounds this week like my best friend or my colleague. I've been doing this for a month now and I thought I would be at my goal. Or I went off track one day, so then I stayed off track all weekend. I've been there and done all of that too. And I will say throughout my own journey, I really never had support with the mindset component. And sadly, I think I struggled significantly longer because I continued to face these really challenging mental barriers and I didn't really know how to work myself through them. So I'd fall off track for a week or a month and then need to get back on track again. So we do that in the rebuild phase. The results phase, a part of that is helping you primarily reach your goal sustainably, whatever that may be. But then we transition you into maintain and sustain. And so that's really, we ensure that you're able to sustain your results before you graduate. And graduation means I can now move forward, if desired, on my own. And I have all of the essential tools to sustain everything that I've accomplished.
So the mindset component, you're putting in more to that phase two.
Right.
Now, is this the part where you're really addressing people's thoughts as far as looking into the future, like say 6 months to a year from now? I actually did a podcast not too long ago, a solo on this, because this was something bodybuilding helped me with, because you don't get up on that stage unless you've envisioned it. Like, that's the thing. And it really keeps you on track. That vision of standing on the stage in the heels, in your suit, with the lights, with the bronzer on you, and the judges, and all of that, that would really kept me on track, because in order to get there, I had to live that reality. I couldn't say, there wasn't room for me to say, well, I'm just going to binge today, because I had this vision in my mind. Do you use that kind of visionary technique in your coaching?
For sure. My coaching program is an investment. And I always work with the women at first to say, we have it's 6 months or 12 months initially. Within this 6 month period, where do you want to be? We don't focus on we do focus on where you are right now, but we spend all of our time working you towards where you want to be. And we do vision what that's going to look like for you. And who are you going to be? How are you going to feel? What are you going to be doing differently? How are you going to show up for yourself? Because one thing I see often is, as women, it's easy to invest in our children, into sports, into activities, vacations, home repairs, all the things, but then taking some of the funds and putting them on ourselves is challenging. And at times, it's not necessarily a financial issue, it's more of a confidence and believing in yourself issue. and feeling like that when you put that money to yourself, that you're actually going to show up for you. And so a part of visioning where you want to be is saying, hey, I believe that I am going to get to where I want to be. Like, for example, you standing up on that stage and wearing the heels and going through it and winning the competition. For my clients, it's I see myself in 6 months or 12 months being a healthier version of myself, being able to stand in front of my colleagues and give a meeting, not worrying about the way that I look or feel, being able to play with my children with great energy and feel like I can keep up with them at Disney or on the vacation, being with my husband and feeling confident when we're intimate or when we're on a date versus feeling ashamed of myself and needing the lights off. These are real things real women are going through. It's not talked about enough, and it's a shame because so many women are silently struggling with low confidence and not believing in themselves. And so a part of the work we do is saying, hey, this is where you want to be in 6 months, right? This is where you want to be in a year. And a big part of the work I do is if you're starting off in the repair phase, 95% chance it's going to take us 12 months to get you where you want to be. I know that may sound like a lot of time in the grand scheme of things with all the different phases we're going to work through. It's not, especially if this is the last investment you make in your health, as it should be. Rebuild phase and on, probably 6 months is plenty of time. But I always say, when you start, you have to vision where you're going to be in that 6 to 12 month period, because that is what's going to keep you going on your tough days. That is going to inspire you to jump and make that investment before you're ready. You may have doubts still, but you're going to see yourself there. And so, yes, I very much so believe in having a vision for yourself and really thinking, how are you going to feel? How are you going to act? How are you going to show up differently? What are you going to wear? How are you going to hold your shoulders back? Think about that right now as we're talking, because you can start taking steps today to become that woman.
Mm, I love this so much. And this is why, and I'm sure you get this too. I'll get messages from women and they'll say something to me like, I wish I had your motivation, which is such a pet peeve. Like I get really irritated. So please don't message me. The reason I get irritated is because motivation is fickle. It comes, it goes. You have good days, you have bad days, you have a good night's sleep, you have a poor night's sleep. If you've got kids, and maybe all three of the kids bring home the flu and you've got the flu too. And all of these things are happening that are going to interfere. At some point, you're going to go down in the valley. So everybody starts out, I think, with, especially with the diet culture, they're excited because I'm sure you see this too. They come into your program, they're excited. But invariably, life gets lifey. Here it comes, something happens. And then the next thing you know, you're hearing, I'm not motivated. So this is where that vision is imperative, because when you go down in that valley, you can't rely on motivation. You got to come back to the goal. You got to come back to what's on the horizon to get back on track.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. If I relied on motivation, I don't, maybe work out once a week, maybe eat well once or twice a week. I mean, if it was all motivation, motivation is fleeting. And when you have businesses, children, jobs, aging parents, your own health issues, spouse issues with health and life and all the things, you can just bet that there's going to be days where your motivation isn't, and that's okay. Because another thing that we see on social media are influencers and, people that's just constantly preaching this motivation and no days off and go hard all the time and never miss a workout. And I'm always just like so motivated to show up. No, no one is always motivated. You have to have that deeper why. You have to have it and you need to see it and you have to believe in yourself. Even when you have those doubts, you have to push them aside. Fake it until you make it. Believe in yourself. You can borrow my confidence until you build your own. But the way you build confidence is getting in those reps. And so it's getting up when you're not motivated and doing the workout anyways. It's staying on track after a hard days of work at work, where it would be so easy to crack a bottle of wine and order pizza, but instead you stick to your meal plan and you eat what you should and you have some hot herbal tea and call it a night. That those are the reps I'm talking about. It's talking yourself off a cliff when you see the ice cream and you're thinking, I really shouldn't be eating this right now. It's not fitting into my plan well at the moment. It's making sure you don't drive past the gym and you go in there when you really just want to go on home or get up at 5 in the morning. Those reps are going to build up your confidence. But if you're solely relying on motivation, there's always a chance where you're just not going to be able to rely on that long term because it's fleeting. It's going to come and go. It's going to go up and down, and very much so impacted by so many other uncontrollable variables in your life.
Yes, so true. It is fickle. You know, as I said, it's here today, gone tomorrow. I know through my journey, it's been ups and downs. There's been back surgery. There's been a rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. There's been a loss of loved ones. Everything you can think about, these challenging situations. But when you have that vision and that goal, and it's a lifestyle, it's not a destination. That's the other problem that I see is people see it as, well, I'm starting at A and going to Z and then it's done.
Right.
And I remember feeling that way my first show, like, well, I'm going to make all these changes, change my body, and then that's it. I'm done. And oh no. And then the shock of finding out, oh, I have to continue to eat enough protein and I have to continue to do strength training. Like this isn't a one and done. And then you come back to that vision, to that mindset, just so important. Now looking at hormones and all of this, because we kind of started out with your story of really being like the profile of a perimenopausal woman at such a young age. How do supporting your hormone health, how does that play into your coaching method and your program?
It's really the foundation of what I do. Everything we do is hormone centered and focused. And the beauty in that is a lot of what we do to support your hormones nutritionally with your exercise is also simultaneously going to support your fat loss or your body composition goals. Because when your hormones are imbalanced, and specifically, let's just say your sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, it's going to be really difficult to lose weight, to lose body fat, to build muscle. So, the more that we can do to support your optimal hormone health, the better your results are going to be. So, everything is focused around optimal hormonal health. Now, if we know via Dutch testing or other forms of labs that there is a specific imbalance, for example, you're estrogen dominant, or you have a thyroid condition, or you have low testosterone, which is also very common in women. Some of my clients are literally coming in at zero almost. We can address that even more customized with your dietary plan, your training, if we do cardio or not. There's so many things that nuances, I would say, that we can really get into and take your customization to a whole nother level of customization. But I believe really even in your 20s, but definitely in your 30s, you have to start thinking about your hormonal health. You have to start prepping and priming your body for perimenopause and doing all that you can to get in front of it and set yourself up for a good transition, because all of us women are going to experience perimenopause and menopause. It's a given. And so there's two ways to get there. We have a really bumpy, hard road, or we have a smooth road that is going to maybe still have a couple twists and turns, because I never assume anything's going to be perfect, but will be significantly better than popping 3 or 4 tires in your car on the way or feeling like you're doing that every single mile. And so it really is the foundation, as well as your strength training, the way we approach it, what we're doing in the gym. A workout, all strength training workouts are not the same. It really needs to be tailored in a way to support your hormones, especially if you are 35 plus, and even more so in your 40s and 50s. But at the age of 30, we do start losing muscle mass unless we're proactively taking action to prevent that. So strength training, hormonal health, all come into play with that too.
Now, what is your recommendation with strength training? Is it because there's different views? Is it high rep, lower weight, go to failure, so to speak, with the heavier weights, lifting heavy? Is it 3 times a week? What does that look like for your clients?
Yeah, so it's very much so similar to your approach where there's a lot of customization. Some of my clients are training 2 days, some are training 3, some are training 4, occasionally 5, but I actually don't work with bodybuilders or bikini competitors. That's really not my niche. So I don't really see women that need to train, let's say, more than 5 days a week. But I realize there are women that have goals for that. And a lot of what I do is more periodized strength training. So being a strength and conditioning coach, a personal trainer at heart, my background is very much in periodizing your strength training. So we do things in block phases where we work through hypertrophy phases and focus in on muscle building and building up that muscle mass. We go through strength training phases where we focus on activating those motor units, ensuring that we can have those fast twitch muscle fibers activate and fire properly, teaching your nervous system also how to pick up the heavier weights. It's very important. And then we also include endurance, more higher rep phases to ensure that we're activating slow twitch muscle fibers, ensuring that you have that ability and stamina to get in more repetitions, keep your heart rate slightly more elevated for a longer period of time. And then sometimes, depending on the individual and their phase, we can add in little bits of HIIT, metcons, metabolic conditioning circuits is what that stands for, to help, facilitate fat loss without losing muscle tissue. And so we can incorporate finishers or HIIT based workouts in their training plan as well. Big emphasis on compound movements, very much so, either it be barbell, machine based, dumbbell based, but I'm also a big believer of let's start with what works for you. So if you aren't comfortable lifting weights, then we can start off with body weight. If you're working around injuries, we will work around that and ensure that your plan meets you where you are. The last thing I want is for my clients to open their app and feel like they can do nothing that's in there, or that it's just way above their fitness level or capacity. It's very much so custom to meet them where they are.
This is so good what you're saying. I really want to park here a moment because you're not giving this one size fits all formula for everybody. Something I'm seeing in the space right now, and you might be seeing it too, is they're telling women, and specifically women over 50 that are in the menopausal window, okay, you all have to lift heavy. Don't pick up, and I understand you don't want to dance around the room with pink dumbbells and do 1,000 reps. Obviously, that's not going to do anything. It's about the muscle stimulus. But we have to look at the individual. I was telling you about my back surgery. I can't go do a heavy deadlift, and I probably will never be able to do that again in my lifetime. So it's not realistic. So when I see that blanket advice, I'm like, you're really not taking into account that individual. People begin to have joint issues, their 40s, their 50s, and beyond. They might have hip replacements, shoulders, back, knees, all of the things. And so I love that you take this individualized approach. Periodization is great because it builds in that recovery. So you're having periods of building, periods of endurance, backing it off. You're using various modalities, and that's really what it's about. And then meeting people where they're at. So if somebody's not quite ready, maybe it's bands or a home workout or some body weight things. I think that really is the best way to approach this.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's really what I've seen work with clients. And again, every client is different. Every client has different challenges, injuries. I have one client in mind right now that she has RA, and, thinking of her training over the years, we've had to very much so approach it differently than we would with someone that doesn't have RA at times, depending if there's a flare up or certain things really bother certain joints. And I do want to encourage the listeners, though, that there isn't a one size fits all approach. And so if you are struggling with arthritis or joint pains or overcoming a back surgery or a hip replacement or a knee replacement, if you're in your 50s and 60s, it can feel, or 40s even, it can feel intimidating to go into a gym or feel like you belong there. But I just want to say that you have a place there too. And you can also have a program meet you where you are. And you don't need to be doing, like, for you, if you were a client, it'd be really discouraging if you opened up the app and the program was heavy clean and presses, deadlifts, back squats. I'm going to add in some weighted pull ups, for example. I mean, if we piled those things on you, I mean, you would feel very discouraged. And fortunately, you have the knowledge and expertise to say, this is not customized for me, obviously. But there are many people that just say, oh, see, this is also reassurance that I'm not good enough, fit enough, strong enough to be here and do this. And so we have to watch that with our brain, because there are times as well on this journey, especially the vulnerability as women we sometimes feel in the gym, especially if we grew up in the 70s, sometimes even 80s, where you already feel like you don't have a place in the gym because you didn't grow up doing that. When you see things, you may immediately already kind of have in your head, I don't know if I should be doing this. But then you see that program that doesn't fit your needs, and that just gives you that reassurance that your brain's already looking for, that like, hey, see, I can't do the workouts. I shouldn't be doing this. I've seen that happen all the time. I'm like, no, it's just not the right workout for you. We have to be careful just going into these one size fits all, or even Googling things and just hoping that it's going to give you the best thing, because it's not. It's really not. And maybe if you were in college or felt like you're in your 20s and just needed a start, but if you are really checking the boxes for a lot of what we've talked about today with age, hormones, metabolism, that's not going to work for you.
Yes. And there's such a variance too. Some people genetically, I remember a orthopedic surgeon telling me this, genetically, some people didn't get a good set of genes as far as like their joint health. Like maybe I've seen families where knee replacements, there's knee issues on down the line through each generation, where their daughters have had to have knee replacements and granddaughters and whatnot. And so not everybody gets that great genetic card. We can do a lot to impact our bodies and make the most of our genetics, of what God has given us. But everybody's different. And then through the decades we change. What worked in 30s doesn't work in 40s. And when I turned 60, I had to revamp yet again. I was like, okay, how many times am I going to have to do this over the course of my life? So I love that individuality. I love that you're taking into account a really holistic approach. As we start to wrap up, I want to be respectful of your time. Was there anything that I did not ask or bring up or we didn't discuss that you want the listeners to know?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure when this episode is going to drop, but I want to say this because I think it applies if it's dropping beginning of the year, end of the year, whenever. I think this is great to know. But right now in real time, we're closing out 2024, going to be entering into 2025, and I can just feel the tension and overwhelm when I check my DMs, when I'm looking at my email responses, when I'm scrolling on social media, of just, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I need to do something, but nothing's worked for me. I feel confused. Should I start this detox? Should I do 75 days hard? What should I be doing? I'm getting lots of questions. My number one piece of advice for you is there are many wonderful experts like myself and Carol that are here and pour our hearts and our life into the work that we're doing. Please make sure you find an expert that fits your needs and you personally can resonate with them. It is hard to do anything alone. I'm not a fan. I used to be a DIY girl that tried everything on my own, that would white knuckle things on my own. And I really learned the hard way that that really wasn't the safest, fastest, or most effective way to reach your goals. And so the last thing I want to say is don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid. And instead of going for that diet or going for that one size fits all approach, make sure you're reaching out to someone that you respect or like, that is an expert, that really does have the training and experience to help someone like yourself. Because all coaches, trainers, etc., aren't the same, have the same level of training, expertise. And if you are in this unique phase of life, or maybe you are juggling tons between children and college funds and your retirement and your health and aging parents and your body starting to change, it can be a lot to try and also manage your fitness, your nutrition, your hormonal health, and all of that on your own. So ask for help. There's many great people there that's wanting to help you in a sustainable way. You don't have to do this alone. And, you can still have amazing and fulfilling days ahead on your journey, regardless of if you're 40, 50, 60, or 70 or beyond.
Excellent advice. I love that. Finding the right coach. And I always am fine if I'm not the right coach for somebody, like maybe you are, or maybe someone else is. But I do say, find somebody that you resonate with. They have the knowledge, so important, especially right now. There's a lot of noise in the space concerning midlife, and all of a sudden everyone's an expert. I've noticed that. Like I'll look over and go, not to be critical, but I'll think, really? No. Like, I know you don't have that knowledge, that expertise. And I appreciate so much that you've educated yourself, your holistic, integrative approach. And really, you want to find somebody that has that knowledge that can come alongside of you, because a coach can make all the difference. And a lot of times people don't realize coaches have coaches. I've had many coaches over the years. And if I were going to set some big goal right now for myself, I would get a coach. I wouldn't go, well, I know it all. And because a lot of times just having that person that, how do I put it? It's hard to be objective with yourself. And I learned this from bodybuilding, because I would have looked in the mirror and gone, oh, I need to cut fat. Oh, I'm too thin. Oh, I'm too big. But having that set of eyes to go, okay, this is what you need to do right now. So important. So thank you so much, Ashley. I'm going to make sure that all of your information is in the show notes. I appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I had such a great time talking with you and your wonderful audience.
Me too. And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.